Morning, everybody. This is the first of a series of videos, simulations, and readings that you are going to experience where you learn about the history of atomic theory. One of the things I really hope that you get out of this section on the history of atomic theory is this idea that in science we have models, and in this case we're going to be talking about a model of the atom, but models in science in general have to be very pliable because as we gain new information, those models have to accommodate that new information. And I think this story that you're going to hear really illustrates that very well, because we're going to see the model of the atom change drastically as new information is gleaned over time. Currently, you should be on page 1. I'm going to talk a little bit in this video about Leucippus, Democritus, and Aristotle and their philosophy about atomic theory. You can fill in the blue in your notes, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the information as you write it down. Leucippus and Democritus were Greek philosophers who lived during the 5th century BC, and they were the first proponents of an atomic theory. It's pretty important to understand that this is not a scientific theory. These were philosophers, and they were simply trying to come up with ideas about how the world was created based on what they saw. So Democritus had about 6 major points to his theory, and they're listed below. All matter is composed of atoms, and they can't be further split into smaller portions. The word atom comes from the Greek word atomos, which means uncuttable. So the idea was when you got down to the smallest particle of matter, that is an atom, you literally could not cut it into a smaller piece. He said that there was empty space between atoms. He thought atoms were completely solid. Atoms are homogeneous. They have no internal structure. And finally, Leucippus and Democritus believed that atoms differed in their sizes, shapes, and weights, and that's why we see different qualities in different types of matter. Aristotle vehemently disagreed with Democritus's ideas because he refused to accept the idea that the natural world could be reduced to a random assortment of atoms moving through a vacuum. In other words, he said, if matter was made up of tiny particles, as Democritus suggested, then that would mean that there would have to be empty space or a vacuum between those particles, and Aristotle simply did not believe that vacuums could exist, and therefore Leucippus and Democritus had to be incorrect. Aristotle believed that all matter was made up of 4 elements, and he called those earth, air, fire, and water. And it's my understanding that most people agreed with Aristotle's ideas because they could understand them. Take, for example, a piece of wood. When you burn it, you see fire, one of the elements. You also see smoke and fumes. Therefore, you see the air coming out of the wood. Sometimes you'll see water oozing out of the wood. And finally, you see that ash at the end, or that earthy ash. That would be the earth. So this is just an illustration of Aristotle's theory of what matter is made up of. The next thing I want you to do is watch a short video that compares Democritus and Aristotle's ideas, and then I'll be back and I'm going to talk a little bit about Antoine Lavoisier, Joseph Proust, and John Dalton. Talk to you soon.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.